The blade is drawn.
I'm sorry, I had to let you know. Hoshimi Miyabi is probably the most popular agent in Zenless Zone Zero. It's not hard to see why. She's got the cool katana fighting style similar to that of characters like Virgil and Sam, or Adam if you're based. She's Asian, so she's already won over this game's primary player base, and she's got the hots for the protagonist, which is always the most important part. Not even including the fact that she's also the most busted character in the whole game, and it's not even remotely close. So much so that Miyabi's entire existence has kinda changed how Hoyo has gone about balancing the whole game around her, as well as creating new enemy types that exist to counter her specifically. So I wanted to just look at Miyabi and her overall effect on this game, and how she alone is kinda changing the whole thing. Hoshimi Miyabi was released on December 18th with the release of version 1.4, A Storm of Falling Stars. She wasn't the first member of Section 6 to be released, but she was the most anticipated. Before her was Sokaku, who released alongside the game, and Tsugishiro Yanagi, who released at some point between the two. Even before their release, Section 6 had made the occasional cameo in the game beforehand, clearly to promote them as the guys. Everyone knows that one cutscene of Miyabi fighting Neva that made you realize that she was her, which I find hilarious because in the same update, Lost Void was released to replace TV mode, and Neva isn't in that mode. So most people never fought Nineveh with Miyabi. Ever since this game came out, people were eagerly anticipating Miyabi's release. People were even saving their polychrome before even knowing when Section 6 would become the main focus. I was too, because Virgil from Devil May Cry is literally me. Not saving polychrome, but saving my hard-earned doubloons because I have no financial responsibilities to be worried about. When Miyabi did release, the entire... Have I passed 1 minute? Fucking game broke. Not literally. From what I remember, there has been no point where the game was literally unplayable. I mean broke as in there was nothing in the game that could stand against her. Hoshimi Miyabi was the first agent to be released with the designation Void Hunter, meaning she's one of the biggest badasses in the game's universe, and her gameplay very much reflected that. If I had to compare her to something more normie, it would be like when Anakin Skywalker was released in Battlefront 2. What with him being the chosen one and all, the devs wanted to reflect that by making his base kit super strong, but also giving him a fuck you I win button. Miyabi was like that, but far less problematic since this isn't a PvP game. She is a frost anomaly. Not ice, which is kinda important. It seems like Void Hunters get a special element that's like one of the elements, only cooler. Yixuan isn't a Void Hunter, but she's of the same strength, and she has Auric, which is ether but gold. The interesting thing about Frost is while it functions almost identically to ice, they are considered different elements, so you could proc both and get Disorder. Which would be cool if, there was a regular ice anomaly. So you're probably wondering by now, Tom, what is it about Miyabi that makes her so busted? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I have a few answers, and each one is special in its own right. Her first apparent thing is that she is literally invulnerable during every single thing she does. Go ahead, go through her list of abilities and take a shot every time a skill mentions she is invulnerable during it. This is something I will come back to, so just keep that in mind. The second is the rate at which she is able to attack. She is listed as an anomaly, but she puts out more damage per second than any attack in the game. The funny part is, the anomaly part technically isn't wrong. Her base anomaly mastery is low, which for those who don't know is the rate at which you build up element damage, which I feel like the name of anomaly mastery and proficiency should be switched. Even though it's low, she's able to get in so many hits, it doesn't matter how low it is. So, she has insane DPS on top of being able to quickly apply anomaly buildup. I doubt there's anything wrong with that. But you're probably wondering how she's able to dish out damage so quickly. Well, that's thanks to a special little ability called Shimotsuki, or as I'll probably end up referring to it as, Judgment Cut End. She needs 6 charges to use this, and allow me to list all the ways she can earn these charges. One is using her extra special attack, which gives 2. Second is her ultimate, which gives 3, and if she has her additional abilities, she can get 2 if Disorder is triggered. There's another way, but we'll come back to that, kiddo. So, insane damage potential, incredibly fast anomaly buildup, and constant invulnerability so nothing can ever interrupt this. Yeah, I can see the issue with this. Well, actually, I don't see the issue with this. This isn't a PvP game, might as well go crazy. The thing is, Hoyo did see an issue with this. I have no doubt they intentionally made her strong for both lore reasons and a strong character sells, But her existence created an issue with this game's balancing that I don't think we've quite gotten over, and Hoyo's solution to the Miyabi problem kinda screwed over a bunch of older agents, while Miyabi is still just as strong as she was. Now, usually, when a developer creates something that is a little too OP, the immediate solution is to nerf that thing and bring it in line with everything else in the game. Hoyo did not do this. Hoshimi Miyabi, to my knowledge, has not gotten a single nerf since this game came out. I use her daily. She gets me through my HIA dailies in under 10 seconds. Of course I'm going to use her every day. I have not seen a single difference in her ability since she came out. So what Hoyo decided to do was just add new shit that existed solely to punish Miyabi and make playing her actually kinda difficult. In the Lost Void, there are ether activity modifiers that heavily nerf anomalies, but the biggest thing that you will see in almost every form of endgame content is miasma. It might be a bit conspiratorial, but I believe that miasma was created solely to counter Miyabi. It essentially lengthens that boss's health, which prevents Miyabi from insta-killing it, and they've even been adding the miasma shield to older enemy types so she can't kill them either. I have no proof this is the reason why miasma exists, but I totally think that is why it exists. Also, once again, call me conspiratorial, but I think they want to shift focus from Miyabi to Yixuan, and she just so happens to heavily counter miasma. It also makes sense when you look outside of gameplay and see how Yixuan is just hijacking everyone else's stories. It kinda seems like they want people to like Yixuan more than Miyabi, but then again, that's just a conspiracy theory of mine. A conspiracy game theory of mine. A Chinese game company wants people to like the Chinese character more than the Japanese one? Pfft, unthinkable. Now, the existence of miasma and its purpose of nerfing Miyabi has presented some issues, primarily in making other agents who aren't Miyabi kinda terrible. One of my favorite agents in the whole game is Ellen Joe, an ice attack agent who was already struggling when Miyabi came out, then jumped off of a cliff when Hugo came out. Ellen has been getting power crept almost as much, if not more than Zhu Yuan, and miasma has kind of made her miserable to play. She doesn't do sheer damage, so she can't damage through the miasma, and she doesn't have infinite iframes or is an aftershock, so it's hard for her to even get attacks in, because the miasma also gives increased hyper armor to the enemies, and she can't just outdamage it like Miyabi because she doesn't attack as fast as her. Ellen isn't the only victim of this. If you use anyone who uses evasive assists, then you're pretty much porked. The second main way to counter miasma other than sheer force is constant defensive assists, but if you're using agents who don't do either, then you can't fight back. And you can't just persevere because the endgame is mostly centered around timers, so using anything other than the optimal setup is unusable. And the funny part about all of this? Nothing changed when it came to Miyabi. She is still really damn strong. The miasma does have a noticeable impact on her, but it's not noticeable enough. She is still the absolute top tier agent, and the game's attempts to counter her has made so many other agents suffer because of it. Something I mentioned earlier is how Lost Void has ether activity modifiers that nerf anomalies. That sucks because now every other anomaly who isn't Miyabi is now suffering. That might not seem like a big deal because you could just not use the agent or not use the modifier, but when all the agents getting the cool gear are anomalies, and these are the challenges which give these rewards, not using the modifiers on top of not using anomalies has gotten a bit harder. And again, this hardly affects Miyabi. Yes, her anomaly buildup has suffered a bit, but she still dishes out insane damage on a level no one else can compete with. She's not just overpowered, she's simply overpowered, and I can prove it. So here is my Hoshimi Miyabi. This is how I've built her. Now the stats we want to mainly focus on are the 3 orange ones. Yeah, not anomaly, because that makes sense. And you know, I think this is a pretty decent Miyabi build. 3400 damage, 99% crit damage, 69 nice crit rates, and also 3 Mindscape, but don't worry, we'll come back to that one. Now, pretty decent stats, all things considered, but it's not optimal, and I'll show you why. Now, if we look over at skills, of course, core skills maxed out, and all her main skills, they're not maxed, but they're pretty decent level. At least all the ones that mattered. Sorry, Dodge. Now, the main part and the funny part is the equipment, the disk drives, and the W engine, because that's where things get really funny. Now, first drive, not optimal, but we got decent crit rate and crit damage, so there's nothing to complain about there. Disk drive 2, even better, crit damage, crit rate, and attack. Pretty damn snazzy. Even number 3, more crit rate and more damage. And anomaly proficiency, even though she technically doesn't need it. Disk drive 4, not as good, but we do get lots of attack with our crit rate, so, can't complain. Where things get funny, though, for me, is 5 and 6. Number 5, well, first, I was supposed to get ice damage bonus. Couldn't get that, so I went with the second best thing with attack. No crit rate boost, no crit damage boost, and not the best attack boost, as well as boosting HP and anomaly proficiency, which is kind of useless in Miyabi's case. But it gets even worse if we go to number 6. Now, the main stat to focus on number 6 is attack percentage, which I did get, but nothing else that I needed. No crit rate boost, no crit damage boost, and no attack boost. Yet, despite this dog water build, I'm still putting out insane damage. It doesn't matter that this build sucks, because Miyabi is just too good for that. This isn't an optimal Miyabi setup, and I'm still fucking annihilating everything in the game. I could make this better. I could make Miyabi stronger, but I don't need to. And you want to know why I don't need to? It's because of her W engine. Her W engine is insane. Now, not everyone has her W engine, so, it's hard to account for this, but I do have it. Now I want to show you why it's funny. First off, base attack, 743. Pretty normal for S-rank W engines. Crit rate, 24%. Fucking poggers. Now, if we go to Frostane Star here, let's start with the funniest part of it. Crit damage increases by 50%. Now, I want to make something clear. If we go over to my thing, 99% crit damage, pretty good. This does not show up on that. If I were to remove this, my crit damage is still 99%. So this is an unlisted crit damage bonus. So I have 99% on top of the 50%. And I just have that. Now, we can look at the rest of Frostane Star, but honestly, it doesn't matter. Now, I want to look at the funniest thing that turns Miyabi from incredibly strong to downright busted, and that's her Mindscape. Now, I've had her first 2 since she came out, and I got her 3rd one during her rerun. Her 3rd one doesn't matter, though. That's just to boost her skills by 2 points, so, pretty damn neat stuff. What I want to focus on are these first 2, and especially the second one, but we'll start with the first one. While in Shimotsuki stance, every 1 point of Fallen Frost consumed will allow basic attack Shimotsuki to ignore 6% of defense, stacking up to 6 times, and lasting until Shimotsuki stance ends. Now, the part to take notice of is when she uses all 6 points to use Judgment Cut End, because then she's ignoring 36% of the enemy's defense. Which isn't insane, but it is pretty good, and you will notice its effects. But that's not the part we want to focus on. What we want to focus on is Mindscape 2, because that's where things get hilarious. Basic attack Kazahana and dodge counter damage increased by 30%. Okay, kinda cool. Hoshimi Miyabi gains 1 point of Fallen Frost when the final move of the 5th hit of basic attack Kazahana hits an enemy. So, in case she didn't already have enough ways to gain Frost charges, she has an additional by just doing her basic attack combo. Now, pretty good. Allows her to gain Judgment Cut End even faster. You want to know how she can get Judgment Cut End even faster? Upon entering the battlefield, Hoshimi Miyabi immediately obtains 6 points of Fallen Frost. So, she can just start every combat encounter with Judgment Cut End. This is how I do my dailies in less than 10 seconds. It starts with Miyabi, I use her buff, quick swap to Miyabi in Judgment Cut End, and I just get through all my dailies in literally under a minute. Oh, and also her crit rate increases by 50%, because that's what she needed. She needed another 50% of crit rate, because I wasn't already at 69, funny weed number. To be honest, I don't know what they could do to nerf Miyabi, because these things that she gave her are just insane. Also, I would like to point out, my W engine is only at 1 star. That crit damage boost could increase even more, but I haven't been able to do that because I don't have more. So, once again, not even the optimal Miyabi setup. She is dishing out insane damage, and I could do better. In concept, a lot of additions Hoyo has added are kinda neat, but they came at the cost of making one agent worse, which got everyone else caught in the crossfire. They could just nerf Miyabi herself, but at this point I don't think it matters, and that's due to how the endgame is built. The endgame of Zenless Zone Zero is built all around timers. Get 3 stars in Deadly Assault before time runs out, win both combat encounters, and Shuyu defense before the 5-minute mark to get S rank. It's less about surviving and more about dishing out damage as fast as possible, possible. Has anyone ever lost a deadly assault or Shiyu defense because they died and their team got wiped? That doesn't happen, and every new agent since Miyabi has cemented that. Where agents like Miyabi have infinite iframes, we also have Aftershock agents who exist off-field and can never actually lose health. There's really nothing they could do to nerf Miyabi, because if they nerf her iframes, then everyone else has to get hit. They can't nerf anomaly stats because they're already super low, and they can't nerf her damage because then that would fuck up her anomaly capabilities, and they can't switch off of timers because then that would make the Aftershocks and off-fields like Vivian too overpowered. They've kinda put themselves in a hole, so all they can do is add new shit, which makes her harder to play, and make things easier for the new agents who come out, but unfortunately this comes at the cost of making older agents worse. I have tried so very hard to make Zhu Yuan good, but it just takes so much effort that I've just kinda stopped trying at this point. This is all still speculation on my part. I don't actually have a clue if anything they're doing is to neuter Miyabi, but it certainly feels like it does. Which is funny because I still don't struggle with her. The only time using her felt genuinely hopeless is fighting Mevarok on Ether Activity 15, but that's mainly because you're on a 3-minute timer and she can activate her Miasma Shield multiple times during the fight. I don't think there is any solution to make her more balanced, and I can live with that. If I want a challenge, then I'll simply use another agent, and if I want to feel true motivation, then I'll use Miyabi. Not everyone thinks the way I do though, and some people just want to optimize the fun out of the game, and we as a community should throw bricks through their windows for no other reason than it would be funny. I've got nothing else to say, so I'm gonna end this video here. If you agree with me, then you should like the video, and if you disagree with me, you should subscribe, so I know the exact names of the people who are wrong.